Hey y'all, how you doing? Just checking in, and for a very special reason today, actually. My name is Abby, and I had some interest in this book that I had shared on X called The Book of Secret Wisdom by Zinovia Dushkova. I don't know much about her, but I mean, I can appreciate that she was able to translate these stanzas from the Book of Zion, written in the stanzas language, which is apparently the oldest language ever written. So I figured why waste any time? I'm just going to put it in motion, and we'll read a couple stanzas at a time, and everyone can go on the journey with me. So if you don't have a copy, you can just I guess you can just listen along or watch me read it, but whatever. Whatever. Anyways, yeah, so I'm going to start out by reading the 12 stanzas, and then I'll come back and do a piece on the preface, there's a lot of really good information in there, and then maybe after that I'll go into the glossary and pick out some fun terms. So I'm hoping I have enough time to read out 3 stanzas right now. So I'm going to start with reading stanza 1 from the Book of Secret Wisdom, the prophetic record of human destiny and evolution. Let's see, let's keep going here. All right, it's a beautiful story, by the way. It's just, there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it, so I really like it. I really like this book. Stanza 1, the genesis of divine love. The gods were at work, rotating the stellar wheel. They were winding up the hidden mainspring, which would then unfold, manifesting itself in the concept of time. The earth was waiting for it, for the spot bearing that name was already aware of its mission. A small, barely visible drop of matter was swirling around in eternity, and for it the lords of destiny had foreordained love. It was their loving intention to see that love would fill that little drop and, after condensing it, carry it to its defined ultimate boundaries. The sun was beginning his round. He had a defined role, the bearer of love. It was his job to imbue that small cluster with the warmth of the fiery heart, which finally started to take on a definite appearance. The newly attenuated state of matter enabled the sun to carry out the excellent work of filling it with his currents of abundant love. The gods knew their task and set a new pace for their wheel, which was now vibrating faster than ever. The density of matter was coupled with firmness and elasticity. The currents of love had to struggle in order to successfully pierce the stone with their fire. The new kingdom of stones was populating the earth, endowing her with power over their motionless bodies. The planet, raised by the currents of love, knew only one way she herself could bring forth life, and that was love. Love, here she was a rule, a law, a form of life. Only one thing was required of the earth, to love, and the lords of destiny kept strict watch over the fulfilling of karma. The planet was doing her utmost. She knew how to love and what it was to be loved. With all the zeal and fervor of her loving soul, she warmed the motionless stones, breaking through their hardness and elasticity. They revived, drinking in the generous currents of love. Stones were resurrected. They began to blossom like petals of divine flowers and took their place in turn. The planet was beautified by a profusion of flowers. The warmth of the sun became stronger, for he was clearly experiencing the magical power of the influence of love, and the flowers loved both their father sun and their mother earth. They were their children born in common. The parents carefully looked after their flowers' luxuriant heads of many colors, open wide towards them. The universe beheld the works of the lords and was pleased with the flowers' first successful appearance. Ceaselessly they worked, imbuing the world with a fragrant aroma. Attracted by the flower's power of love, constellations generously imparted their own. The lords of destiny were content. All was proceeding according to their predestined plan. Love reigned supreme all over the world. She was calm and content in her earthly domains. All the celestial bodies supported her in that divine work. Only the sun sometimes peered anxiously into the bowels of earth during the times when she hid her sides from him as she rotated. Because of the density of matter, the sun was not able to glimpse what was happening on the other side of the planet. Eventually, robust vegetation girdled the world, hiding the gentle flowers in its shadow and choking their tiny stems with its mighty roots. These giants seized power and began to swallow light greedily, cutting off the warm solar rays from those who were shorter and much weaker than they. Without the caressing warmth of the all-loving sun, lesser creatures withered and perished. Evil had appeared in the world for the first time. The sun was unable to discern what was going on beneath the thick crowns of giant trees. These effectively concealed evil, which had managed to steal in surreptitiously. The all-seeing eye of the sun partially lost its power, for he could not illuminate the hidden backside of the earth. The condensation of matter came to the end of its tether. Billions of years had passed, and human souls were still similar to stones. How could they have become so callous and impenetrable? It was a difficult question to answer. They had become acquainted with evil, who was already rotating his black wheel of time in full swing, standing just beyond the border of light. Pardon me. While on the reverse side, the darkness was trying to obscure the whole of the light, so as to transform him into gloom. But for that, she needed some assistance from earthlings. The light was fighting bravely, armed with the one power of love. But because he was always ablaze with pure divine love, he felt no hatred towards the darkness, nor did he know jealousy. Love was the most powerful weapon, and the darkness was helpless against her. It was necessary to wield that weapon to be omnipotent. Omnipotent. But the darkness could not approach the light openly, for she would immediately burn down, engulfed in the flame of love. But by and by she found a way around. She would enter human hearts, which were alone capable of holding the sacred divine gift. The human heart started to glow, like the celestial star itself. And that tiny sun in a human breast was full of the bright and brimming overcurrents of love. Nevertheless, the heart, parched with an endless thirst, went on constantly searching, only for love. That divine impulse could be quenched by love alone. Apparently, the love of the earthly hearts did not know satisfaction, for she still had not yet fully experienced the power of the sacred, divinely supreme love. An enormous task of recognition lay ahead. And so to fulfill that task of pure heavenly labor, the lords of destiny asked the gods to launch the supreme mechanism which would turn another wheel, one that would go beyond the bounds of time, leading human hearts along heavenly pathways to the true recognition of love, or the recognition of true love. Yeah, we'll go on and read stanza 2. I do have an appointment to get to, sorry. Stanza 2, the knowledge of the heart. The day had arrived. The wheel gradually gained momentum and led human hearts towards knowledge, something the hearts had known for a long time. But man was not yet able to comprehend the wisdom of his own heart. He had not actually guessed that the heart was capable of knowing. And all the while, the still, small voice, which imparted the wise counsel of life, was practically inaudible to the insensitive human ear. And even when that voice rang out with unmistakable clarity like an alarm bell, calling its hearers to arm themselves with the power of love on the eve of death, man attempted to muffle it, preferring to take a roundabout route through the labyrinths and machinations of the mind. But the intellect was not able to perceive what the heart knew, for it was subject to decay. Evil could easily penetrate thereinto, not fearing any encounter with the bright, dazzling light of fiery thought. Man could think only on the lowest levels, and so the wheel began a new round. People gradually began to pay attention to the leadings of their own heart, becoming convinced that the mind's contemplations, more often than not, led them to wrong conclusions. And the barely perceptible voice of the heart, it appeared, had presaged the truth. And so there was a pressing need to hearken to that which possessed the wisdom of insight. But how to do this? How was it possible to avoid mistaking the voice of the mind for the inaudible tremors of the currents of the heart? People became thoughtful once again, and the heart, meanwhile, was still waiting for the time when it would be accepted as the best and most faithful friend. The sun was shining, keeping a close watch on human hearts. He tried to nourish them with fires in a bid to reinforce the power of life. Life herself was the gift of light, of the lights, for without him she could not be conceived. Would this world even exist if there were no sun? He gave the light, and it was in the rays of light that life had spread her immortal wings. Yes, life was immortal, for she was the forever companion of the light, who did not know death. Life and the light were one. The heart, woven out of light, belonged to life. The most delicate particles of condensed matter were used in its formation. The heart's secret was that it could not live without love. Only love's energizing currents could wind the hidden mainspring therein, the spring that allowed the wheel of life to rotate. The heart without love was dying away, losing its life force, even turning to stone. The darkness was overtaking those people who had trampled down their inner light and so were useless to life. These were the people of death whom evil was penetrating continuously, not only their thoughts but also their breast, wherein he ruled on a soulless throne of stone. There was nothing for him to fear, for a stone could not strike a spark that would have burnt the darkness' tenacious paws. Oh, how the darkness desired such hearts! One had to work very hard to get one's own way, and the darkness spared no effort or means to this end, if only she could see herself ensconced on the throne which had previously belonged to life. Man was endeavoring to grow in grace and wisdom. He had already been able to distinguish the light from the darkness. In him, these two principles were tightly interwoven, forming a single, indivisible essence. Gloomy thoughts swept past, dictating strict orders and generating a combative atmosphere. Evil was amassing legions of venomous thoughts, capable of poisoning the whole joy of life with their sinister stench. Joy was the lampion oil which made the flame of love glow so brightly. The dark host of gloomy thoughts was successfully depriving the little fire of the nourishment it needed. The flame was gradually diminishing in size, and a light puff of air was all it would take to extinguish it forever. The world was being deprived of joy, without which both life and love would be unthinkable. The sun, too, was endeavoring to give all that he could. He tirelessly warmed the ever-cooling hearts in his rays of love. The sun wished to apply the full force of his energizing currents to restore human souls to life. He did not blame people for having lost the gift, their ability to love. For the star himself, the most important thing was love. Therefore, he kept on blazing with greater and greater fervor, so that the fire-breathing warmth of his heart would be enough for all. He was ready to enter into every breast and ascend from the depths of the earth in the form of billions of tiny lights, which would scatter like stars and delight eternity with their munificent currents of love. But to that end it was necessary to find such people capable of accepting the mighty warmth of heaven, unafraid of being burnt alive in the fire-breathing flame of love. To become the sun, this was something only man could wish for. So day by day, the sun circled the earth in search of him. The gods were turning the wheel and winding up the mainspring, which was merging with the powerful spirals of the new currents being sent to the sun's aid. They were proclaiming the beginning of a new era, which would be experienced under the sign of fiery love. That's all these neat little symbols too in there. That one. All right. I have enough time to get out the third stanza, and then we'll come back and do the rest of this later. Stanza 3, the sowing of love. We're sowing the seeds of love, seeds of love. We're sowing the seeds. I like that song. All right. The light was triumphing. Hooray. The light knew, oh shoot. All right, well I guess we're going without the back light, or the front light. The light was triumphing. The light knew how strongly people felt the need for him. The human heart was in need of the fires of love that was already established as the undeniable truth for everyone. The gods knew their work, and above all, they knew the periods. Being beyond time and space, they were fully aware of the great significance of the designated periods by which the world was ruled. The bright light had broken through. He had pierced the layers of darkness piled up by human ignorance, penetrating the dense veil of matter. He glistened in the gloom. The light was given birth in the soul. He was palpably felt by men. Wonderful changes started happening in the world. Once they realized the whole life-giving might of the flame, people began serving the fire. They were burning in their hearts, but the tongues of fire were still erratic and did not reach very high. Man had given life to the fiery seed, and now he began to glimpse a faint and still immature shoot, not knowing how to make it grow. With his still limited knowledge, he reached out and touched the flame. Knowing from his earthly experience how necessary it was to water shoots for more vigorous growth, he generously drenched the germinating seed in water. Only the water extinguished the fire with a hiss. In the gathering darkness, the light grew dim upon contact with this cooling matter. Once again, a forbidding time was at hand, when rampant extinguishing forces could come into play. Yet the servants of the darkness were unaware of a central fact, that their period had expired, and they were helpless before the divine power of the seed. Even though the flame was now practically devoid of its bright tongues of illumination, it was able to revive again. The seed held within itself the ability to send forth new shoots out of the depths to replace the fading ones. The light was inextinguishable. The stellar period had defined a new round. At this point, it would be impossible to return to the past, since all bridges would be burnt, and they would be burnt by none other than man himself. The most important thing was to discern where the light was and where the darkness was, and what the past and the future meant for him. Through wise discernment of the essence of all things, he was able to build the saving bridge that would span the abyss and lead him to the kingdom of the light. But all too often, people were stubbornly closing their eyes, unwilling to glimpse the bright path which was right beneath their feet, and blindly burnt the bridges that would lead them to the shore of salvation. Insisting on their own way, these blind ones were depriving themselves forever of the kingdom of eternal fires, preferring to remain instead in the total gloom of ignorance. Thus began to unfold the stratification of humanity, which was to make the last step beyond the border of the darkness or the light. That was their final choice, for the period, as designated by the stars, had so determined. Love once again came to life in the world and diffused the almighty rays, which were even able to pierce through the most incredibly dense masses of petrified matter. And, little by little, people began to open their eyes. They had long known that even a stone was capable of loving, protecting, guarding, and bringing happiness to their owners. It's true. Owners whom they indeed loved. Yes, the world was brimming over with love. Man beheld how a flower which he had mercilessly torn from its stem would incline its beautiful little head towards him, dedicating the last moments of its life to a declaration of love. Love for him, a man or a woman. Yes, a flower is able to love even a slayer that has brutally severed the thread of its marvelous, innocent life. Flowers forgive everything because they sincerely love man. Even men who are most in love with the money they receive for the goods they sell. The flowers very much hoped that people would open their eyes and understand how it was even painful to love them. Indeed, humanity was coming nearer to this understanding, for the language of one flower was always understandable to another member of the floral kingdom. After all, it was not so long ago that human beings were flowers themselves, covering the whole planet in a carpet of beautiful bloom. But the gods did not pluck them. ... A time to blossom and a time to bear fruit. Were not bounteous fruits being borne by those that had been blooming so luxuriantly in accord with the periods established for them? Yes, their fruits were fresh and fragrant, but at first they could be seen only by the Creator, the one who had sown the seeds. Hers was the hand that had generously scattered the divine seeds on the earth. But some of them fell among thorns and were choked. Many fell in stony places. God was waiting for the harvest. He longed to see the divine fruit, for like would bear like unto him, as an apple tree would bear an apple and a pear tree a pear. Thus, in everything, his law would be obeyed. The seed germinated and hastened to bear fruit. All the shoots were by now firmly established, showing strong stems. Only their fruit was still in question, and only as the fruit ripened was it possible to judge the results. Before that, the periods had not yet come. In the meantime, the fruit was absorbing everything granted to it by a generous world, and the roots, whether they were sunk into the darkness or into the light, served to determine the fruit's true value. Thus, the gods directed the motion of the wheel toward the new period, and that was the season of reaping, designed to effect the final calculation of the ripened divine harvest. That is the end of stanza 3. The sowing of love. Super fast, just because I thought it was fun. When it talked about how stones would even love their owners, and people would love the stones. Like it's silly around here. People paint pictures on these rocks, and then they'll leave the rocks laying around town, and people will pick them up and maybe exchange them for one of theirs, or take them and put them somewhere new. And so I thought that was really nice. Like, here we are putting art on the stones and just kind of sharing them with the community. So what an interesting time. Anyways, if you would like to join me back again, I will begin with stanza 4, The Gift of Mind, when we return. And this is story time with Abby. So peace be with y'all.